I was recently featured in a national South African magazine talking about debt and financial recovery. And everything I said was true, but it was also only about 200 words. And our debt story is 700,000 Rand and 6 losses. So I want to talk about the part that didn't fit in the print. The part I think a lot of lost parents carried quietly for years without naming it. Before I do that, if you're new here, hi. I'm Bianca. I'm an empowerment coach, author, and speaker, and I work with lost parents navigating pregnancy loss and everything that comes with it. If this is your kind of content, subscribe. I'm here every Monday. I want to highlight 3 areas that are most often overlooked. Firstly, pregnancy loss and grief is expensive in ways nobody puts on a spreadsheet. I think this was really apparent for me. I needed a lot of support, particularly in the first couple of years, where I had 4 pregnancies within a year. I had extra appointments. I had alternative therapy, chiropractor, nutritionist, all sorts of things, trying to find ways to improve my health and to feel more in control of something that was very much out of control. Also, silly things like always having a stash of about 6 pregnancy tests in my cupboard and extra expenses on supplements and different foods and being exhausted when I was pregnant or terrified and crying and unable to cook, lots of takeout, lot of somewhat what some people consider frivolous expenses. But in the time, it was quite something. Before all of this started, my husband and I had worked together. We signed up for YNAB and we were working together on paying off debt, getting our finances in order, preparing for our wedding. We were on the same page. Things were going really well. We were using our apps exclusively for tracking our funds. And then we got married and we had a little bit of debt, but not a huge amount. And we, soon after our honeymoon, found out that I was pregnant. And then I lost that baby. And then it happened again and again. In between all of that, I had an appendectomy that wasn't covered by my medical aid because I refused to, well, not I refused, the surgeon refused to do open surgery on me because I was actively trying to fall pregnant. And so there were a lot of expenses that came up, directly related and indirectly related. But pregnancy loss and grief is expensive. They are expensive in ways that you can't really put on a spreadsheet. It had nothing to do with reckless spending and everything to do with trying to survive. Secondly, grief takes your budgeting brain offline. Our priorities shifted so dramatically that managing money just wasn't possible. We were focused on testing and eating right and doing all the things and tracking cycles and making sure that we were doing the baby dance on the days that were most appropriate. We were so focused on trying to improve our chances of having a baby that budgeting was one of the last things that we could focus on. And I think also what happened with grief in general, not just pregnancy loss grief, but grief overall, is it consumes you. It consumes you in ways that aren't always obvious. You may still be showing up for work and doing the things, but the mental processing that you are going through during any period of grief just takes so much bandwidth. And it's not the sort of thing that you can still have financial awareness with. Financial awareness requires a kind of mental bandwidth that grief takes away. Finally, the shame of grief and the shame of debt feel identical. There is this awareness that your financial situation is getting worse, which causes anxiety, and anxiety causes the grief to escalate. And then you become upset about being upset about your grief because you should be over by now because that's what society says to you, which then feeds you into the cycle of grief and shame and debt, and it all just spirals and gets out of hand. I remember realizing fairly recently when I looked back to realize how interlinked both of those things were. I was pregnant or trying to get pregnant or raising a very young baby or dealing with medical procedures for the best part of 9 years. And all of that took all of my focus, and worrying about finances and trying to pay off debt and manage our finances was an incredibly difficult thing to even wrap my brain around at the time. And you're carrying both the shame of grief and the shame of debt, telling nobody, believing it's proof that you're failing. And the cruel thing is that they feed into each other. The grief makes the debt worse, and the debt makes you feel worse about the grief. And it took me a long time to see them as connected, let alone to stop blaming myself for both. If any of this is landing for you, you're probably going to want to stick around. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. I wrote about all of this, the fuller, messier version of the story, including everything that sits behind the numbers in my memoir. So that's one. All of these lines, my story of pregnancy, loss, and hope. I've also written a blog post that goes into a lot more detail, both with my story and with how we managed to get out of the debt. We did go into full debt review, and it was exactly what we needed. And the details of that are on my website. It goes into more detail than the magazine feature did. If you picked up this video because some part of it felt familiar, the book might be exactly what you're looking for. It's the version of the story where I didn't have to keep it to 200 words. The links are in the description. I'm Bianca Johnson, and this is what I do every Monday. Videos about pregnancy loss, grief, the tools that actually help, and what life looks like when you start to find yourself again on the other side. If any part of this has landed with you, hit subscribe. I'll be here every Monday.